Frankfurt, 1848. Heinrich Weber sat in a crowded beer hall, surrounded by laughter, conversation, and friends. He was the most social man in Frankfurt. Everyone knew Heinrich. Everyone wanted to drink with Heinrich. Every gathering felt incomplete without him, and Heinrich had never felt more alone in his entire life. That night, exhausted from another evening of performance, he walked past a bookshop. In the window, a single volume caught his eye. The World as Will and Representation by Arthur Schopenhauer. He bought it, read the first page, and everything changed. Schopenhauer wrote, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." 3/4. Not a little piece. Almost everything you are. Heinrich realized he'd been trading his authentic self for social acceptance his entire life, and Schopenhauer was about to show him why that was destroying him. The question isn't why some men choose solitude. The question is, why do you keep choosing the crowd? And what is it costing you? Chapter 1. The Rise. Heinrich's Prison of Popularity. Frankfurt, 1848. Heinrich Weber was exactly what society wanted him to be. 28 years old, successful merchant, well-connected, invited to every dinner party, every salon, every social gathering worth attending. His father, a respected banker, had trained him well. Heinrich, success in business requires relationships. You must know everyone, be liked by everyone, never refuse an invitation. And Heinrich obeyed. Perfectly. Monday, dinner with the Rothenbergs. Tuesday, cards with university friends. Wednesday, theater with colleagues. Thursday, literary salon. Friday, beer hall with the Merchants Guild. Saturday, family obligations. Sunday, church, then more socializing. His calendar was full, his social circle was impressive, his reputation was impeccable, and he was dying inside. Every conversation felt like theater, every laugh felt performed, every opinion he expressed had been carefully calculated to offend no one. Challenge nothing, maintain perfect social acceptability. One evening, after a particularly exhausting dinner party where he'd spent 3 hours discussing topics that bored him with people he didn't actually like, Heinrich sat alone in his study. His mind was blank, exhausted, drained not from physical labor but from the constant performance of being the Heinrich Weber everyone expected. He tried to read, couldn't focus, tried to think. No thoughts came, just emptiness. It was terrifying. At 28 years old, Heinrich realized he had no idea who he actually was beneath the performance. What did he really think? What did he truly believe? What interested him when no one was watching? He didn't know. The performance had consumed everything authentic. That week, he walked past a bookshop. In the window, a volume by a philosopher he'd heard colleagues mock, Arthur Schopenhauer, the misanthropic hermit who lived alone on the edge of Frankfurt. The title caught his attention. The World as Will and Representation. Heinrich bought it, not knowing it would destroy his entire social life. Page 1. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Heinrich read that line 3 times. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. When was the last time he'd been alone? Truly alone, not just physically isolated, but free from the mental presence of others' expectations? He couldn't remember. The next evening, Heinrich declined a dinner invitation. The first time in years, he'd said no. His friend was confused. "Are you ill? You never miss our gatherings." "I just need an evening to myself." "To yourself? Heinrich, that's not like you. Is something wrong?" The assumption was immediate. Wanting solitude means something is broken. Heinrich spent that evening alone in his study. It was uncomfortable. The silence felt loud. He didn't know what to do with himself. But something happened. For the first time in months, he had a genuine thought. Not a calculated opinion, not a performed idea, a real thought about his actual experience. And it terrified him how rare that had become. He picked up Schopenhauer's book again. In order to live at peace with others, society has to tolerate a great deal of stupidity. People flatter and fawn on each other, and each conceals from the other his true thoughts. Each conceals from the other his true thoughts. Heinrich realized he'd been concealing his true thoughts so long, he'd forgotten he had them. The next week, he declined 2 more invitations. His social circle noticed. Heinrich is becoming strange. He's not himself lately. I'm worried about him. But Heinrich was discovering something. He wasn't becoming less himself. He was becoming more himself. The performance was cracking, and something authentic was emerging underneath. One evening, his oldest friend confronted him. Heinrich, everyone is concerned. You're withdrawing. You're canceling plans. This isn't healthy. You need your friends. Heinrich looked at him, this man he'd known for 10 years, and realized they'd never had a single authentic conversation. Every interaction had been surface. Every discussion had been safe. Every moment had been performance. Do I need my friends? Heinrich asked quietly. Or do I need the performance of having friends? His friend stared at him, uncomprehending. And in that moment, Heinrich understood what Schopenhauer meant. Most people can't distinguish between authentic connection and social performance. So they call performance friendship and wonder why they feel so alone. Chapter 2. The Principle. Schopenhauer's warning. Heinrich became obsessed with Schopenhauer's work. Every night after his merchant duties, he would read. Not the social philosophy everyone discussed at salons. The uncomfortable truths Schopenhauer wrote that made people dismiss him as misanthropic. One passage stopped Heinrich cold. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Heinrich tested this. When he was with friends, who was he? He was the version who agreed to keep peace, the version who laughed at unfunny jokes, the version who never said what he actually thought, the version who performed interest in topics that bored him. When he was alone, different thoughts emerged, uncomfortable opinions, strange ideas, his actual perspective. But around others, those authentic thoughts died before reaching his lips. Why? Because authenticity creates friction, and friction threatens social acceptance. Schopenhauer explained it perfectly. In order to live at peace with others, society has to tolerate a great deal of stupidity. People flatter and fawn on each other, and each conceals from the other his true thoughts. Each conceals from the other his true thoughts. That was the mechanism. The performance trap. Heinrich started observing his social circle with new eyes. At dinner parties, everyone performed interest in topics they found tedious. They asked questions they didn't care about. They expressed enthusiasm they didn't feel. No one said what they actually thought. Everyone monitored their words, adjusted their expressions, calibrated their personality to maintain acceptance. It was exhausting to watch once you saw it clearly. One evening at a salon, a merchant expressed an opinion about trade policy. Heinrich disagreed. He'd spent years in the business and knew the man was factually wrong. But correcting him would create social friction, make things awkward, label Heinrich as difficult. So Heinrich stayed silent, nodded, let the wrong opinion stand. And in that moment, he understood what Schopenhauer meant. You forfeit yourself to maintain social peace. Heinrich found a passage in Parerga and Paralipomena that crystallized everything. Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them, but as a rule, the purchase of books is mistaken for the appropriation of their contents. Most people collect friendships like they collect books, for appearance, not for actual value. They maintain relationships not because those relationships nourish them, but because having friends is what you're supposed to do. It's the social equivalent of buying books you'll never read to look educated. Heinrich realized most of his friendships were exactly this: performed, maintained, but ultimately empty. Then Heinrich discovered something that changed everything. Schopenhauer referenced experiments by earlier philosophers about social conformity. Heinrich experimented himself. At a dinner party, he expressed a deliberately unconventional opinion, not offensive, just different from the consensus. The reaction was immediate: discomfort, quick subject change. Later, his friend pulled him aside. "Heinrich, that was unusual. Are you feeling all right? Having a different opinion. Something is wrong with you. The group requires conformity, and conformity requires surrendering your authentic thoughts." Schopenhauer wrote about this extensively. The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Everything, so to speak, lies open before him. The less intelligent need constant company because they don't have an inner world rich enough to sustain them. But Heinrich was discovering he had depths. Questions that needed silence to explore. Thoughts that required solitude to develop. Every hour spent maintaining friendships was an hour stolen from that inner world. One night, Heinrich wrote in his journal, "I've spent 10 years building a social life, and Schopenhauer has shown me that I've actually spent 10 years building a prison. A beautiful, well-attended prison where everyone admires the bars I've constructed." He continued, "The principle is clear. People don't want your truth. They want your compliance. They want the version of you that makes them comfortable, and maintaining that version requires killing who you actually are." This was the core insight that would transform Heinrich's life. Friendship, as most people practice it, is a performance that trades authenticity for acceptance. And the cost of that trade? Your actual self. Heinrich looked at his calendar. 16 social obligations in the next 2 weeks. 16 performances scheduled. 16 opportunities to be anyone except himself. Schopenhauer's words echoed, "What a man is contributes much more to his happiness than what he has, or how he is regarded by others. What a man is, not who he knows, not how popular he is." Heinrich made a decision. He would start saying no, not to be rude, not to push everyone away, but to protect the space where his actual self could exist. His social circle wouldn't understand. They'd be hurt, confused, concerned. But Schopenhauer had taught him, their comfort is not worth your erasure. Chapter 3. The Test. The Breaking Point. Spring, 1849. Heinrich began declining invitations systematically. Not all of them, but enough to create space. Space to think, space to read, space to exist without performing. His social circle noticed immediately. "Heinrich seems distant lately. Is everything all right with Weber? He's becoming antisocial." One evening, his closest friend, Karl, whom he'd known since university, confronted him at the merchant exchange. "Heinrich, we need to talk. Everyone is concerned. You're withdrawing. You're not coming to gatherings. You're changing, and not for the better." Heinrich looked at Karl, 10 years of friendship, and realized they'd never had a genuine conversation. Every interaction had been surface, safe, performed. "Karl, let me ask you something. In 10 years of friendship, have I ever told you what I actually think about anything that matters?" Karl frowned. "What do you mean? We talk all the time." "No, we perform conversation. We discuss weather, business, gossip, safe topics. But have I ever shared an authentic thought? Have you?" "Heinrich, you're overthinking things. This is what friends do. We enjoy each other's company. Do we? Do you actually enjoy my company? Or do you enjoy the version of me that laughs at your jokes and agrees with your opinions and never makes things uncomfortable?" Silence. Carl looked genuinely hurt. "What's happened to you? You've been reading that hermit philosopher, Schopenhauer. He's poisoning your mind with his misanthropic nonsense." "Or," Heinrich said quietly, "he's showing me that I've been poisoning myself by maintaining friendships that require me to be anyone except who I actually am." Carl left. They barely spoke again. The next week, Heinrich received 3 concerned letters. Friends checking if he was ill, depressed, going through a crisis. The assumption was always, wanting solitude means something is broken. But Heinrich felt the opposite. For the first time in years, something was becoming whole. He continued his experiment, declining invitations, spending evenings alone, reading, thinking, discovering what his own mind produced without the constant interference of social performance. And something remarkable happened. His thoughts deepened. Ideas that had been vague impressions became clear insights. Questions he'd been too distracted to explore revealed themselves, but the social consequences intensified. One dinner party he did attend, a professional obligation, became an interrogation. "Heinrich, we're worried about you. You're isolating yourself. This isn't healthy. You need friends. Human beings aren't meant to be alone." Every statement was delivered with concern, but Heinrich heard what Schopenhauer had taught him to hear. They weren't concerned about his well-being. They were uncomfortable with his choice. His independence threatened their worldview, because if Heinrich could be happy without constant socializing, what did that say about their own exhausting social calendars? One woman, intelligent, well-read, said something revealing. "Heinrich, don't you get lonely?" "No," he replied honestly. "I feel more lonely at parties surrounded by people than I do sitting alone in my study." She looked confused, then concerned, then uncomfortable. His answer violated the social contract. "You're supposed to need us." The final test came in June, the Merchant Guild's annual celebration. Everyone attended. Refusing was professional suicide. It insulted the guild, suggested arrogance, marked you as unreliable. Heinrich had attended every year for a decade. He hated every minute of it. The loud conversations, the performative camaraderie, the exhausting small talk with people he'd never connect with genuinely. This year, he sent his regrets. He was indisposed. The response was swift. The guild master called on him personally. "Heinrich, your absence was noted, and not favorably. This is not how we conduct business. Relationships matter. You cannot succeed as a merchant while alienating the very people you must work with." Heinrich realized this was the moment. Choose social acceptance or choose himself. He thought of Schopenhauer's words, "The wise man seeks not pleasure, but freedom from pain." The pain of maintaining these hollow relationships versus the pain of social consequences. "With respect," Heinrich said carefully, "I can conduct excellent business, I can be reliable, professional, ethical, but I cannot continue pretending that forced socializing is valuable. I cannot continue performing a version of myself that exhausts me. If the guild requires that performance, then perhaps I'm not suited for this profession." The guild master stared at him. "You're making a terrible mistake, Weber." "Maybe." But as the man left, Heinrich felt something he hadn't felt in years. Free. That evening, he wrote in his journal, "Schopenhauer was right. The moment you stop performing, they call you broken. The moment you choose yourself, they call it selfish. The moment you embrace solitude, they call it sickness. But I am discovering their labels are not my truth. Their need for my compliance is not my obligation. Their discomfort with my independence is not my problem." He had passed the test. He had chosen himself over the crowd, and the relief was overwhelming. Chapter 4. Warrior Psychology. Understanding the Mechanism. Heinrich dove deeper into Schopenhauer's work, discovering not just philosophy, but psychology, the mechanisms by which friendship destroys the authentic self. Schopenhauer's analysis revealed multiple layers. Layer 1. The conformity mechanism. Humans evolved as social animals. For 200,000 years, being cast out from the tribe meant death. Our brains still operate on that ancient programming. Heinrich noticed it in himself. When he expressed an opinion different from his friends, his heart rate increased. Palms sweated. A primitive fear response. His amygdala, the fear center, couldn't distinguish between social rejection and physical danger. It treated both as existential threats. Schopenhauer wrote, "The less intelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." Heinrich understood. Less intelligent people need constant company because they lack internal complexity. Their minds are simple, so they require external stimulation. But intelligent people, they have entire universes inside. Questions that demand silence to explore. Ideas that require solitude to develop. Every hour spent maintaining friendships was an hour stolen from that inner universe. Layer 2. The transaction behind the performance. Heinrich started tracking his friendships like a merchant tracks ledgers. What did his friends want from him? Validation, agreement, entertainment, an audience for their stories, emotional labor when they were upset. What did they offer in return? The comfort of not being alone. But Heinrich was discovering being alone wasn't uncomfortable. Performing for others was. Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations Heinrich now read alongside Schopenhauer, wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential." Was friendship essential or just expected? Schopenhauer answered, "Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them. Most people collect friendships like unread books, for appearance, not value." Layer 3. The tall poppy effect. The most painful discovery. His friends didn't want him to grow. When Heinrich started reading philosophy seriously, they called him pretentious. When he chose evenings of reading over socializing, they called him boring. When he developed deeper interests, they called him changed. Every step toward growth was met with resistance disguised as concern. Why? Schopenhauer explained it perfectly. The wise man seeks not pleasure, but freedom from pain. Heinrich's growth made his friends' stagnation visible. His discipline exposed their excuses. His depth highlighted their shallowness. They weren't concerned about him. They were uncomfortable with their own reflection. Modern psychology would later call this tall poppy syndrome. When someone rises above the group cuts them down, not because they're wrong, but because their height makes everyone else's shortness visible. Layer 4. The death of deep thought. Heinrich experienced what Schopenhauer described. A man of genius can hardly be sociable, for what dialogues could indeed be so intelligent and entertaining as his own monologues? It sounded arrogant, until Heinrich experienced it. He'd spend an evening in deep thought, exploring ideas about will, consciousness, meaning, making connections between Schopenhauer, the Stoics, Eastern philosophy. Then he'd attend a dinner party and the conversation would be gossip, business, weather, trivial complaints. The contrast was jarring. He'd gone from contemplating the nature of consciousness to hearing about someone's trouble with their tailor. Jung would later write, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." That was Heinrich's loneliness. Not from being alone, from being surrounded by people who couldn't meet him at his depth. Layer 5. The neuroscience Schopenhauer intuited. Though brain science was crude in 1849, Schopenhauer understood intuitively what modern neuroscience would later prove. Social engagement and deep creative thought use different brain networks. You cannot do both simultaneously. When Heinrich socialized, His brain activated social processing, monitoring others' reactions, calibrating his behavior, managing his reputation. When Heinrich thought deeply, his brain deactivated that social network and activated focused attention regions. The two states were mutually exclusive. Every hour spent maintaining friendships was an hour his brain wasn't available for deep work. Schopenhauer had written, "We should treat our minds as we treat our bodies. We keep them fit by giving them daily labor." But most people's minds never get that labor. They're too busy in social performance mode. The brutal synthesis. One evening, Heinrich synthesized everything he'd learned into his journal. Friendship, as society practices it, is a systematic destruction of the authentic self through conformity pressure. Be like us or be cast out. Transactional emptiness. Maintain contact. Receive acceptance. Growth resistance. Stay small so we feel adequate. Depth denial. Keep conversation surface level. Mental fragmentation. Perform. Don't think deeply. The mechanism is brilliant in its cruelty. Society makes you need the very thing that destroys you. You feel lonely, so you seek friendship. But friendship requires performance, which creates deeper loneliness. So you seek more friendship, creating more performance, creating deeper loneliness still. A trap disguised as connection. Schopenhauer's voice echoed in his mind. In order to live at peace with others, society has to tolerate a great deal of stupidity. Heinrich closed his journal. He understood now, completely. The question wasn't, how do I maintain friendships while being authentic? The question was, why would I maintain friendships that require me to be inauthentic? Schopenhauer sat in his study, surrounded by books instead of people, and wrote, "Throughout history, the greatest minds have understood what the mediocre never will. That solitude is not exile, it is liberation. That aloneness is not emptiness, it is fullness." He paused, knowing his words would reach across time to those ready to hear them. If you feel what I feel, if friendship exhausts you, if crowds drain you, if you need silence to truly exist, you are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are simply a thinking person trapped in a world that values performance over presence. He continued writing, speaking not just to his contemporary critics, but to all who would come after. Join us in this tradition of intellectual solitude. We are the philosophers who choose depth over popularity, wisdom over acceptance, truth over comfortable lies. Subscribe to this path. Walk with those who understand that the examined life requires, above all else, the courage to be alone. Then he returned to his work, knowing most would reject this truth, but those who understood it would be transformed by it. Chapter 5. The Transformation. Heinrich embraces solitude. Autumn 1849. Heinrich made his final, complete break from his former social life. He didn't announce it, didn't make it dramatic. He simply stopped performing, stopped accepting invitations, stopped initiating contact, stopped maintaining relationships that drained him. His social circle was confused, then hurt, then angry, then indifferent. Within 3 months, the invitations stopped coming. His name stopped being mentioned, and Heinrich felt relief. Profound, overwhelming relief. For the first time since childhood, he established a life built around his actual self rather than others' expectations. Morning. Wake at dawn. 3 hours of reading. Schopenhauer, the Stoics, Eastern philosophy, classics. His mind sharp, undisturbed. Afternoon. Work as a merchant. Focused, efficient, professional. But relationships stayed professional. No forced socializing, no performative friendship. Evening. Walk alone through Frankfurt for 2 hours. Think, process, integrate ideas. Night. Write, reflect, develop his own philosophical investigations. No hour wasted on performance. No energy drained by maintaining hollow relationships. No time stolen by social obligations. His neighbors thought him strange. Former friends considered him sick. The merchant community whispered about his antisocial tendencies. But something extraordinary happened. Heinrich's mind, finally free from constant social interruption, began producing thoughts of remarkable depth. He started writing essays, not for publication, but for clarity. Explorations of ideas Schopenhauer had opened. The nature of will, the roots of suffering, the path to tranquility. His thinking wasn't derivative. The solitude allowed him to follow threads wherever they led, unconstrained by what would be socially acceptable to express. One evening, a former acquaintance saw him walking alone and expressed concern. "Heinrich, this isolation, it's not healthy. You need people. Human beings aren't meant to be alone." Heinrich stopped walking, looked at the man genuinely. "I'm not alone. I'm with myself. For the first time in 30 years, I'm actually present to my own existence. The question isn't why I'm alone. The question is why you're so afraid of it." The man had no answer. He walked away uncomfortable, confirming what Schopenhauer had written. Most people cannot bear their own company because they have nothing substantial within. Heinrich wrote in his journal that night. "I've discovered what Schopenhauer knew. Solitude is not the absence of company, it is the presence of yourself. And for a thinking person, that is the richest company imaginable. The transformation isn't from social to antisocial. It's from fragmented to integrated. I'm no longer splitting myself into acceptable pieces for different audiences. I'm simply one person, whole, present, real." The change was existential. For years, Heinrich had felt like multiple people. The merchant Heinrich, the friend Heinrich, the son Heinrich, the social Heinrich. Different performances for different contexts. Now, just Heinrich. The same person alone or with others. No performance, no adjustment. No exhausting calibration of personality. Schopenhauer's philosophy had given him the framework. But solitude gave him the experience of integration that philosophy described. One Sunday, traditionally his most socially obligated day, Heinrich sat in his study with a book and his thoughts. No church, no family dinner, no performative piety, just silence. And in that silence, he had a realization that crystallized everything. Society calls this loneliness, but I have never felt less alone. Because loneliness is the feeling of disconnection, and I was most disconnected when surrounded by people who couldn't see the real me. Now, alone in this room, I am finally connected to my actual thoughts, my genuine feelings, my authentic self. This isn't loneliness. This is homecoming. He remembered Schopenhauer's words. What a man is contributes much more to his happiness than what he has or how he is regarded by others. What a man is. Heinrich was discovering who he actually was, and it was remarkable, not because he was extraordinary, but because he'd never met himself before. The person emerging in solitude was curious, contemplative, drawn to deep questions. He loved early mornings and long walks. He found beauty in ideas more than in social validation. He preferred authentic silence to performed conversation. This person had always existed, but the social performance had buried him completely. By winter, Heinrich's transformation was complete. Not because he'd achieved some final state, but because he'd established a way of being that sustained itself. Schopenhauer called it inner wealth, a mind so rich that external companionship becomes not just unnecessary, but actually detrimental. Heinrich had built that wealth. 1 hour of reclaimed solitude at a time. His former friends pitied him, his family worried, society dismissed him. But Heinrich looked at their lives, exhausting social calendars, hollow friendships, constant performance, and felt profound gratitude. Schopenhauer had saved him from that prison, and the key had been simpler than anyone imagined. Stop performing. Start being. Choose yourself. But society doesn't forgive those who choose themselves, and what happened next would prove the ultimate test of Heinrich's philosophy, a choice between everything he'd built in solitude and everything he'd left behind. Chapter 6. Deep Training, Arc. Cultivating Inner Wealth. Heinrich didn't just embrace solitude, he systematized it. Following Schopenhauer's philosophy, he developed what the philosopher called inner wealth, a mind so rich that external companionship becomes interference rather than enhancement. Practice 1. The reading discipline. Every morning before sunrise, 3 hours with the greatest minds in history. Not contemporary popular books, not business texts, the timeless works, Plato's Republic, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, the Bhagavad Gita, and of course, Schopenhauer. Why these specifically? Schopenhauer explained, "A precondition for reading good books is not reading bad ones, for life is short." Life is short, too short to fill your mind with mediocrity, Heinrich noticed. Most conversation degraded his thinking. It pulled him toward consensus, toward safe opinions, toward what everyone already believed. But dialogue with dead geniuses? That elevated, challenged, expanded. After 3 hours of reading, Heinrich's mind was sharp, prepared, filled with profound questions rather than social anxieties. Practice 2. The observation walk 2 hours daily. Same route through Frankfurt. No companion, no distraction, just observation, contemplation, processing. Schopenhauer had written, "One can be truly oneself only as long as one is alone." Heinrich discovered this truth in motion. Walking alone, his thoughts unraveled themselves. Ideas that seemed tangled while sitting became clear through the rhythm of steps, but only alone. Companionship destroyed that internal dialogue, made it external, performative, shallow. Practice 3. The boundary system. Heinrich became ruthlessly protective of his time. No visitors before noon, no social obligations on writing evenings, no quick catch-ups that stole hours. When former friends would say, "We should meet sometime," Heinrich learned to say, "I appreciate the thought, but I'm protecting my solitude these days." The reactions were predictable. Hurt, confusion, judgment. But Schopenhauer had prepared him. Ordinary people think merely of spending time. Great men think of using it. Using time, not spending it. Every friendship is an investment. Is the return worth the cost? For Heinrich, the answer was increasingly no. Practice 4. The inner dialogue. Most people fear their own thoughts, so they fill silence with noise, chatter, music, distractions. Heinrich did the opposite. He cultivated internal dialogue. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man who has inner wealth asks of the external world nothing but the negative gift of leisure. Just leisure, time alone, space to think." Heinrich developed this inner wealth through practice, sitting with difficult questions, following uncomfortable thoughts, allowing ideas to develop without external validation. He discovered his own mind was more interesting than most people's conversation, his own questions more valuable than their answers, his own silence more nourishing than their noise. This wasn't arrogance, it was recognition of what he'd built. Practice 5. Creative solitude. Heinrich noticed a pattern. Everything meaningful he produced came from solitude, every insight, every piece of writing, every genuine thought. Social interaction consumed ideas. Solitude created them. He wrote, "Schopenhauer showed me. The crowd is where ideas go to die. They get softened, compromised, made acceptable. True thoughts require solitude to maintain their edge." By 1851, 2 years into his solitary life, Heinrich's routine was sacred. Dawn to noon, creating, reading, writing, thinking. Noon to 2 p.m., physical care and work preparation. 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., merchant duties, professional but not social. 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., walking, processing, integrating. 8 p.m. to midnight, reading and reflection. No wasted hours, no drained energy, no stolen time. People who observed his life from outside saw loneliness and isolation. Heinrich saw freedom and integration. Schopenhauer's voice echoed constantly. The wise man seeks not pleasure, but freedom from pain. The pain of social performance versus the pain of social consequences. Heinrich had chosen, and the peace was profound. Late one evening, Heinrich sat by candlelight, writing in his journal. He paused, feeling he was writing not just for himself, but for those who would come after, anyone who'd felt the same suffocating weight of social obligation. For 2 years, I've practiced what Schopenhauer taught, that solitude isn't exile, but liberation. That being alone with worthwhile thoughts is superior to being surrounded by trivial minds. He continued, his pen moving with unusual urgency. If you're reading this from some future time, if you feel exhausted by friendships that drain rather than nourish, if you long for silence but fear being called broken, know that you are part of an ancient tradition. The tradition of philosophers, thinkers, and creators who understood. The deepest connection is the one you have with yourself. Join us in this practice. Not by abandoning everyone, but by being ruthlessly selective about who deserves access to your authentic self. Subscribe to this philosophy. Better alone and real than companioned and fake. Walk this path with those who understand that 3/4 of yourself is too much to forfeit for anyone's comfort. Heinrich set down his pen, knowing these words would find those ready to receive them. Then he returned to his reading, to his thoughts, to his chosen solitude. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation, the Ultimate Choice. Spring, 1853. 5 years after Heinrich first read Schopenhauer. Everything in Heinrich's life had changed. His business remained successful. He was professional, reliable, ethical. But his personal life was exactly as he'd chosen. Solitary, deliberate, rich with inner wealth. Then came a letter that would test everything. His younger brother, Friedrich, was getting married. The family demanded Heinrich's presence, not just at the wedding, but at all the social events surrounding it. Dinners, parties, gatherings with relatives he hadn't seen in years. 2 weeks of intensive social performance. The old Heinrich, the one who'd existed before Schopenhauer, would have simply attended, endured, performed. But that Heinrich was gone. He wrote to his brother, "Friedrich, I wish you genuine happiness, but I cannot attend these celebrations. Not because I don't care about you, but because the person I've become cannot survive 2 weeks of the social performance these events require." The family's response was swift and brutal. His mother wrote, "Heinrich, you've become selfish and cold. Your brother's wedding is not optional. Family is not optional. This philosophy has poisoned you." His father, "Your behavior is an embarrassment. You will attend, or you will no longer be considered part of this family." The ultimatum was clear: conform or be cast out. Heinrich sat with Schopenhauer's books surrounding him. 5 years of cultivated inner wealth, 5 years of protected solitude, 5 years of discovering who he actually was. Could he surrender that for 2 weeks? Return to the performance? He wrote in his journal, "They call me selfish for choosing myself, but they demand I sacrifice my peace for their comfort and call that love. They want me to perform being someone I'm not and call that family duty." Schopenhauer warned me, society cannot forgive those who choose authenticity over acceptance. The crowd requires compliance, and they'll use every weapon, guilt, shame, social pressure, ultimatum, to enforce it. Heinrich made his decision. He wrote to his brother, "I choose the person I've become over the person you want me to perform. I wish you happiness, but I will not attend." The family cut him off. Completely. Letters stopped. Invitations ceased. His name became unmentionable in family gatherings. His mother's final words, "We've lost you to that misanthropic philosopher. You'll die alone and regret this choice." But Heinrich felt free, profoundly, overwhelmingly free. He'd faced the ultimate test, family obligation backed by the threat of total social exile, and he'd chosen himself. That evening, he walked along the main river, watching the sunset. For the first time in 5 years, he felt entirely certain of his path. Schopenhauer had written, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." Heinrich understood now. He couldn't choose his desire for solitude, but he could choose to honor it, regardless of social consequences. Some months later, walking through Frankfurt's old town, Heinrich passed 2 men deep in conversation about Schopenhauer's latest essay. He paused, listening. "The philosopher is right," one said. "We spend our lives performing for others, exhausting ourselves, maintaining hollow relationships, wondering why we feel so alone." The other nodded. "But who has the courage to actually live it? To choose solitude over acceptance?" Heinrich smiled and walked on. He had that courage. Because Schopenhauer had shown him the courage to be alone is the courage to be yourself, and that courage, once cultivated, becomes unshakable. The philosophical truth. Years later, in 1858, Heinrich Weber sat in his study, now 58 years old. A decade had passed since his transformation. His life looked nothing like his peers. No wife, few acquaintances, no social calendar. Just work, reading, walking, thinking. Society still whispered about the hermit merchant. Former friends still pitied his lonely existence. But Heinrich had discovered what Schopenhauer spent his life teaching. The loneliest thing you can do is surround yourself with people who make you forget who you are. Not loneliness from isolation, loneliness from fragmentation. When you perform different versions of yourself for different audiences, you lose track of which one is real. You become a collection of acceptable personas with no authentic core. That's true loneliness, being disconnected from your actual self. Schopenhauer had written it perfectly. What a man is contributes much more to his happiness than what he has or how he is regarded by others. What a man is, not who he knows, not how popular he is, not how many people call him friend, what he is in himself, alone. Heinrich looked at his decade of solitude and saw the pattern clearly. Most friendship is performance. Most connection is transaction. Most social time is wasted time. Not all, not every person, but most. And the cost of maintaining these mediocre relationships, your actual life, your creative time, your deep thinking, your authentic self. You trade it all for the comfort of not being alone. As if being alone is a disease requiring cure. But Heinrich, following Schopenhauer's path, had proven otherwise. He thought about the great minds throughout history. Nikola Tesla never married. Isaac Newton died a virgin. Emily Dickinson lived in near total isolation. Were they lonely? Or were they free? There's a crucial difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is a wound, the feeling that something is missing, that you're incomplete without others. Aloneness is wholeness, the recognition that you're complete in yourself, that you don't need anyone to validate your existence. Jung had written, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Who you truly are, not who your friends need you to be. And becoming who you truly are requires, above all else, the courage to be alone. Heinrich wrote in his final journal entry, "Schopenhauer showed me the truth modern culture refuses to acknowledge. Most people will spend their entire lives performing for audiences who don't really care, maintaining friendships that don't really nourish, staying busy with social obligations that don't really matter. They'll die having never met themselves, having never sat in silence long enough to discover what they actually think, feel, want, believe. They'll die surrounded by people and utterly alone. I chose differently. I died to my social self so my authentic self could live. And the man I discovered in that solitude, curious, contemplative, drawn to deep questions, was worth every friendship I lost, every invitation I declined, every judgment I endured. The pattern is identical throughout history. The crowd consumes, solitude creates. The many make you mediocre. The silence makes you magnificent. Companionship trades your depth for their comfort. Aloneness protects what makes you unique. This is the truth modern culture refuses to acknowledge. You cannot become who you're meant to be while maintaining what everyone expects. You must choose, and that choice defines everything. The Philosopher's Lesson, Frankfurt, 1860. A young merchant, overwhelmed by social obligations, exhausted from performing, walked past a bookshop. In the window, The World as Will and Representation by Arthur Schopenhauer. The same book Heinrich had found 12 years earlier. The young man bought it, read the first page, and everything changed for him too. Because Schopenhauer's truth doesn't die, it passes from those ready to teach to those ready to learn. That evening, the young merchant walked to Heinrich's office. Everyone knew the hermit merchant who'd chosen solitude. Herr Weber, I just read Schopenhauer, and I recognize myself in what he describes. The exhaustion, the performance, the feeling that my entire social life is slowly killing who I actually am. Heinrich looked at this young man, 28 years old, exactly his age when he'd made the same discovery. Then you understand what I learned. The most tragic thing isn't dying alone. It's dying surrounded by people who never knew you, living your entire life performing a version of yourself that's acceptable rather than authentic. But what do I do? If I withdraw, I'll lose everyone. Heinrich smiled. You'll lose everyone who only valued the performance, and discover that most people only valued the performance. But on the other side, in the solitude they fear, you'll find something they'll never understand. Yourself. Complete. Integrated. Real. The young man left with Schopenhauer's book under his arm. Heinrich watched him go, knowing the cycle continued. Schopenhauer's wisdom passed down through those brave enough to choose themselves. He thought of Schopenhauer's final words. I have lived alone, and I die complete. Heinrich understood now, completely. The world doesn't remember how many friends you had. It remembers what you actually created, who you actually were. And you can only create, can only be, when you're brave enough to stand alone. The world needs more individuals brave enough to be themselves, not performers maintaining images, not fragments seeking completion through others, just people whole enough to stand alone. Choose carefully, because 3/4 of yourself is too much to forfeit for anyone's comfort. Stand alone. Become yourself. Create something the crowd could never imagine. This is not loneliness, this is freedom. And it's been waiting for you all along, in the silence, in the space between friendships, in the courage to walk away. The discipline of intellectual solitude that Schopenhauer taught and Heinrich practiced, it continues today. Not in 19th century Frankfurt, but in every person who feels suffocated by social performance and liberated by silence. If this exploration of friendship, solitude, and authentic existence resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to The Gentleman Philosopher. Your subscription helps us create more content like this. Deep philosophical investigations that challenge the comfortable lies. Modern culture tells about success, connection, and happiness. We're building a community of clear-sighted individuals who understand that solitude isn't loneliness, it's freedom. Who recognize that being alone with worthwhile thoughts is superior to being surrounded by trivial minds. Who choose depth over popularity, truth over acceptance, becoming over belonging. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking deeply. Thank you for having the courage to consider that maybe, just maybe, the loneliest thing you can do is surround yourself with people who make you forget who you are. Until next time, protect your solitude. Guard your creative time. Be ruthlessly selective about who gets access to your authentic self. The world needs more philosophers and fewer performers. Be the former. Choose carefully. Because as Schopenhauer knew and Heinrich proved, 3/4 of yourself is too much to forfeit for anyone's comfort. Stand alone. Discover yourself. Become who you actually are.